I was 11 at the time and living in a nice suburban area. We had recently moved into this house my parents had built, and it was our first home versus rented house in a sketchy area. It was a very nice neighborhood. The whole family made friends quickly with lots of neighbors, but especially the ones 3 doors down. They had a daughter my age. I'm male, by the way, and have a daughter 5 years younger, which is the same age as my sister. Our parents got along well, and we began hanging out quite a bit for barbecues at their house or parties at our house. Friendships were formed quickly and seemed to be very strong. After a year or so, I started realizing things weren't what they seemed. I remember seeing police cars at their house a few times in the evenings, and when I'd ask my parents what was going on, it was always nothing. Just checking in on them type of answers. I was no genius, but at 11 that didn't add up. Why didn't the cops just check up on us? One day I was at their house playing and hanging out, and the daughter went across the street to get another mutual friend, which left myself and the father alone in the house. This was really no big deal as it had happened before, but then he approached me and just seemed off. Yeah, I still don't know what made me feel this way, but I was very uncomfortable and started thinking about leaving. About 5 minutes later, he told me he had something cool to show me. I don't remember what it was, but I think it was something about baseball cards, which I was very fond of. I excitedly started following him. He pulled the attic ladder down and asked me to follow him, which I did without hesitation at first. And something happened, and I still can't process what it was. He was ahead of me on the ladder, and when he looked back to help me into the attic, there was something off. Something about his eyes, his face, his grin. It wasn't right. It looked evil. I can still see it clear as day and can't recognize exactly what it was that set my alarms off. Whatever it was plenty, because I jumped off the ladder and ran out the door. I sprinted all the way home and was choking back tears when I busted through my front door. Mom was there when I came through and could see I was obviously out of sorts and immediately started calming me down. As I came to my senses, I explained what happened. My mom was concerned with how scared I was, but mostly brushed it off as me overreacting. Kid you not, that same exact night I was woken up at around 3 a.m. It was my mom sitting on my bed, and as I awoke, she held me like a baby. I remember how she smelled and how tightly she held me, and I remember her tears hitting my cheek. Eventually, I saw out the window that the neighbor's house was surrounded by police and fire trucks. The neighbor dad had killed himself and his daughter in the attic after a standoff with police. There isn't a doubt in my mind, nor my mother's, that would have been me had I made it into the attic. I still get chills thinking about it. I'm a 24-year-old female, and I live with my roommate, who's a 23-year-old female, in an apartment in the suburbs of Atlanta. As you may know, Atlanta is super dangerous and crime-riddled right now, so we have a Ring camera and a digital lock on our door for safety. About 3 months ago, the sweet family from across the hall moved out, and we got a new neighbor. His name was Jack, and let's just say he was interesting. When we first saw him moving in, we were a bit taken aback by the sheer amount of stuff he was trying to fit in his one-bedroom apartment. All of it was anime merchandise and Star Wars memorabilia. It definitely gave me hoarder vibes, but not my business. When the moving trucks left and a few days had passed, my roommate and I knocked on his door to give him a welcome to the neighborhood gift basket with some baked goods, dog treats, and poop bags for his dog, along with seasonal candles. Apparently, this was not the correct thing to do. After that day, Jack got creepy. It started out innocent enough. He would come to the door whenever he heard me or my roommate coming and were going to have a quick chat, or he would come over regularly to ask for salt or sugar or toilet paper. Sometimes he would ask if we could come over and watch his dog. But within the past 2 weeks, things have really escalated. 2 weekends ago, we were out pretty late partying at the bars near the Braves Stadium. We ended up getting home around 3 a.m., only to find Jack sitting at the top of the stairs, waiting for us. He acted all upset, asked us where we had been, and requested that we told him if we were planning to be out past midnight. I laughed in his face, and he called me a mindless Stacy, which I'm still not sure what that means. He also asked for access to our Ring camera so he could make sure we were safe. We laughed at him again and went into our apartment. Here's the scary part. We checked the Ring camera the next morning, and he sat outside his apartment staring at our door for the rest of the night. When we saw that, we contacted the complex to let them know that he was acting crazy. They told us to contact the police, so we did. The police told us to contact them if he made any threats, but since we lived in a shared space, they couldn't do anything until he entered our apartment or threatened us. I assume the complex said something to him because he left us alone for the next 5 days or so. This week, he is out of control. He is constantly sitting outside of our apartment. My roommate has started leaving for work an hour earlier so that she doesn't cross paths with him. I cannot leave the apartment during the day because he is constantly waiting outside for me. He has asked me out, left love letters on our door, on our cars, and in our mailbox. I told him once that I wasn't interested, and he told me that he would call himself if I didn't go on a date with him. Of course, I don't have that in writing, so the police won't do anything. He has also put up a Ring doorbell of his own so he can track all of our movements, and will leave really creepy sexual notes when we're gone, so we find them when we come back. I'm still not sure what else to do, but I feel like something bad is about to happen. When I was in my early 20s, I lived in an apartment with my mom, brother, and my 2 sons, who were toddlers at the time. The guy who lived next door was about 60, worked for the cable company, and he had always given off serious creep vibes. We were upgrading our internet, and another guy who worked for the same cable company came to do the installation. If I thought my neighbor was creepy, he had nothing on this guy. I was in and out while he was there that day, but every time we were in the same room, he would stare at me with a weird look on his face for an uncomfortable amount of time. The next day was Saturday, and my creepy neighbor must have been having a little get-together. To my dismay, the creep who had done our installation was at the party. It was clear that they were drinking all day and getting louder and more obnoxious as the day wore on. A little after 8 p.m., both my mom and brother left, leaving me there with just my 2 young sons. Around 8:30, there was a knock on my door, and there stood the creepy installation guy. He was clearly drunk, and he said that he had forgotten to have my mom sign some document from the previous day. I said, "No problem, I'll sign it now," and he took a step in an attempt to enter my apartment. I positioned myself so that he couldn't get in the door. Again, I said, "I'll just sign whatever you need." He pointed towards the kitchen and said that he had given my mom the document, and it was in our house. He pushed the door and, more aggressively, tried to step inside my apartment, and this time I made a more forceful block of his attempt. At that point, he turned his head to his left and said something to someone. I moved just enough to see who he was talking to, and it was my creepy neighbor, who was standing with his back pressed up against the wall of my apartment, so that he was out of my line of sight. I quickly stepped back and shut and locked my door, and I saw them walk away. I knew then that the situation was super shady, but just how shady it was didn't occur to me until I was telling my family what happened. Why would the guy have needed a signature on a document that he left with my mom? Why would he come at 8:30 at night when he had been drinking all day? Why did they wait until moments after my mom and brother left? Something they would have definitely seen. Why was my neighbor standing so that I couldn't see him? I'm glad that my creep radar was on full alert that night because it really scares me to think what might have happened if I had let him walk into my apartment.